Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a story for you that's been eating at me. A mystery that started with a whispered rumor in a small town and has slowly, painfully unraveled into something much bigger. This isn't just a story. It's a journey I'm on, trying to piece together the truth about someone I loved more than anything. So, settle in, because this one's going to be a ride. They told me to let it go. They said justice had already been served. That Emma's death was just one of those unfortunate incidents small towns whisper about for a few months before completely forgetting. But how could I forget? How could I ever move on from the way her eyes looked that night, or the way her house smelled like rain and copper? Those sensations are etched into my memory, as clear today as they were 2 years ago. I still remember the officer's voice, calm and definitive. "Case closed, Mr. Cross. You should try to move on. Move on." As if she wasn't my entire world. As if our life together could just be erased. It's been 2 years now, and honestly, not much has changed in my world. I still live in the same apartment, the same kitchen table where we shared so many meals. The same dent in the hallway wall from the night she playfully threw her shoe at me for leaving the lights on again. Sometimes I still catch myself expecting her to walk through the door, humming that Fleetwood Mac song she absolutely adored, a warm smile gracing her lips. The absence is a constant presence, a hollow space that time hasn't managed to fill. But then, last week, everything shifted. I stumbled upon something that cracked open the carefully constructed quiet of my grief. A dusty box, buried deep in the back of her old desk, sealed with tape that had become brittle with age. Inside, nestled amongst old letters and dried flowers, were her journals, her thoughts, her dreams, her everyday life, laid bare on those pages. I devoured them, each word a bittersweet echo of her voice. But then, a jolt. One page was torn out, leaving a gaping hole in the narrative. And the last entry? Ow! It was dated the very same night she died. Half a sentence, scrawled in her familiar messy handwriting. "Daniel's been acting strange lately. Think he knows." Daniel? Who is Daniel? What did he know? Why did she only get to write half a sentence? A chill ran down my spine. The official story, the accidental fall, suddenly felt thin, translucent. I knew, with a certainty that shook me to my core, that I had to find out what she meant. This wasn't just about closure anymore. It was about truth. My first stop was the police station. The detective who handled Emma's case, the one who told me to move on, wasn't there anymore. Transferred, they said. But they did give me the file. Said it was public record now, 2 years on. Her death, as I already knew, was officially ruled accidental trauma from a fall. The report detailed no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints that didn't belong. They even subtly pointed out that I wasn't home that night. I'd been at a friend's place, playing cards until well after midnight. I remember that night vividly, or at least fragments of it. The clinking of beer cans, the droning hum of a ceiling fan, the low murmur of conversation. But here's the strange part, the part that makes my stomach clench. I can't seem to remember who I was playing cards with. Isn't that funny? Memory's a strange thing, a fickle companion. I took the file home, my hands trembling slightly, and spread it out on the kitchen table. The same table where Emma and I had shared countless meals, where we'd laughed and argued and planned our future. Her photo, a framed snapshot from a sunny afternoon, stared up at me. That soft smile, the one that always seemed to light up her face but never quite reached her eyes. And for the first time in 2 years, as I stared at that photograph, a cold dread began to seep in. In the corner of the photo, a faint reflection, a man, standing in the mirror behind her, was wearing my jacket. My jacket, the one I thought I'd left casually draped over a chair that night. The one that was supposedly at home while I was out playing cards, a detail I'd never thought to question until now. The pieces, disparate and unrelated for so long, suddenly began to shift, interlocking into a terrifying new picture. This changes everything. Now, I'm not usually one to dive into true crime or personal mysteries like this, but when it's someone you love, you find strength you didn't know you had. This isn't just about proving something. It's about honoring Emma, about finding the truth she was trying to tell. And I'm going to need your help. This journey is just beginning, and I'm going to be sharing every step of it with you. Every lead, every discovery, every unsettling realization. This isn't just my story anymore, it's our investigation. What do you think about Daniel? Who could he be? What about that reflection? You think the police missed something? Or was it something more sinister? I've already started doing some digging into everyone Emma knew, trying to find any Daniels that might fit. I'm also going back through my own memories of that night, trying to recall who I was with and why my memory feels so hazy. It's unsettling, to say the least, to question your own recollections. The next steps are crucial. I'm going to revisit Emma's journals, looking for any other subtle clues, anything she might have written about this, Daniel, or anyone else who seems suspicious. I'll be looking into the background of everyone mentioned in the police report, and anyone she worked with or knew closely. This small town might have secrets, but I'm determined to uncover them. If you've ever been through something similar, or if you have any ideas, theories, or even just moral support, please share it in the comments below. Your insights could be invaluable. This is going to be a challenging road and honestly a bit scary. But Emma deserves the truth, and I'm not stopping until I find it. So, if you're as invested in uncovering what really happened as I am, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates on this unfolding story. Let's unravel this together. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next update. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a story that's been weighing on me. A journey through memory, suspicion, and the chilling possibility that the truth we seek might be staring back at us from the mirror. This is a tale about loss, about the secrets we keep, even from ourselves, and the terrifying moment when the past finally catches up. Get ready, because this one is a real mind-bender. It's strange, isn't it, how tragedy reshapes everything? How it warps not just your world, but the perception others have of you, and perhaps even your own perception of yourself. It's been 2 years since Emma, and still, when I walk into a room, the smiles that used to greet me from her friends have vanished. Now, they just look at the floor. Is it guilt on their part? A silent accusation? Or is it me? Am I carrying something? A shadow they can all see? That I'm only just beginning to confront? The official story was always clear. An accident. A terrible, heartbreaking accident. But the human mind, especially when grappling with immense loss, it's a way of returning to the scene, replaying the moments, seeking out cracks in the narrative, small details that don't quite fit. For me, that meant revisiting everyone, starting with Mark Benson, Emma's neighbor, who lived right across the hall from us. Back then, 2 years ago, Mark had told the police he heard shouting around 9 p.m. that night. Dismissed it as a TV show, just background noise. But now, after countless sleepless nights, after 2 years of living with a gaping hole in my life, I needed to ask him again. I knocked on his door, the familiar hallway still holding too many memories. He opened it slowly, his face etched with a familiar weariness. "Daniel," he said, a faint frown creasing his brow. "It's been 2 years, I know, Mark," I replied, my voice a little rougher than I intended. "I just need to ask you one more thing. About that night you said you heard her, Emma?" He hesitated, his gaze drifting over my shoulder, as if searching for an escape. Then he spoke, his words landing like stones in a still pond. "I heard ... both of you." That made my skin crawl. "What do you mean, both?" I pressed, a cold dread starting to spread through me. Mark rubbed his eyes, a gesture of exhaustion, arguing. I didn't want to get involved, you know. Couples squabble, you know how it is. I didn't say anything. Couldn't the air felt heavy, thick with unspoken possibilities? Mark's words were a seed, planted in already fertile ground, twisting the landscape of my grief. I thanked him, walked away, but his revelation echoed in my mind, a discordant note in the symphony of my sorrow. At home, the quiet was deafening. I poured myself a drink, not the kind I used to have, but something milder, seeking comfort, not oblivion. And then I pulled out her journal, Emma's journal. I'd been reading the same few pages almost every night for weeks, months even, searching for a clue, a hidden message, anything that might explain what happened, anything new. Each time my fingers traced the delicate script, the familiar words, but this time, something was asterisk new. There was a faint mark in the margin of the last page, a smudged fingerprint beneath the ink. A distinct mark, right side. And the horrifying realization hit me like a physical blow. It was in the exact same place I'd been holding the journal every single time I read it. I stared at my hand for a long, long time, my own fingerprint now a suspect in my mind, an unwilling accomplice to a truth I was desperate to deny. The next day, driven by a desperate need for clarity, for something to cling to, I visited Emma's mother. She still lived in the same quiet house, though the curtains, once always open, now remained perpetually closed, mirroring the shadows that seemed to cling to her. She hugged me tightly, her embrace a mix of warmth and sorrow. "I'm so glad you never stopped looking for answers, honey," she whispered, her voice fragile. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Mrs. Dawson," I began, using her formal name, a sign of the gravity of my question. "About that night, the night Emma died. Did she say anything to you earlier that day? Something you might not have told the police?" Her eyes, though clouded with grief, held a spark of remembrance. "She called me that evening," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "You said she was scared, said you were drinking again." My mind reeled. "No," I protested, my voice firm, perhaps too firm. She must have been mistaken. I had quit. I quit months before that night, Mrs. Dawson. Her eyes softened then, a profound sadness replacing the fleeting memory. "Honey?" she sighed, a gentle pity in her tone. "Emma told me you always say that." The words hung in the air, a silent accusation, a shattered illusion. The foundation of my grief, built on the certainty of my own innocence, began to crumble. That night, I found myself back in front of the police reports, the cold, stark images of the crime scene. There were pictures of the hallway, the familiar table, the broken vase on the floor. My eyes scanned each one, trying to make sense of the chaos, searching for anything I might have missed. And then, one photo made my heart stop. A glass. On the floor, near the broken vase. Whiskey. Half full. The exact same brand I used to drink. My preferred label. The label was torn, strategically it seemed, just enough to obscure the first 3 letters. Danny closed the folder, the world spinning around me. I stared at the wall, seeing nothing, hearing only the thunderous beat of my own heart. I stayed there until sunrise, grappling with the unthinkable. I keep telling myself these are coincidences, threads of grief weaving together a narrative that isn't real, that I'm chasing ghosts, conjuring demons from the depths of my own sorrow, that I am not the kind of man who could ever hurt someone he loves. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see her lying there, motionless, broken. And the hardest part isn't the blood, or the silence, or the searing pain of loss. It's the look on her face. A look of recognition, of sorrow, of understanding, like she already knew it was me. This journey of rediscovery, this confrontation with the past, is incredibly difficult. And I'm still figuring out what it all means. It's a testament to how deeply our memories can be influenced, and how sometimes the truth can be the hardest thing to face, especially when it's about ourselves. Thank you for listening to this incredibly personal and difficult story. Your support means the world as I navigate these challenging waters. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to confront a difficult truth about your past, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more content, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next upload. I'll see you all very soon. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a story that just won't let go. A puzzle with pieces that shift the moment you think you've got them figured out. It's about the uncomfortable truth hiding just beneath the surface. It's waiting for us to ask the right questions, or maybe the wrong ones. My journey started with Emma's last day. Everywhere I turned, the whispers were the same. She was quiet. She seemed scared. She was ready to leave. That last word, leave, just hit me differently. I ended up at the bar where Emma worked weekends. It was one of those small, cozy places, red neon lights humming over old pool tables. Jack, the bartender, spotted me instantly. "Daniel Cross," he said, a hint of surprise in his voice. "Didn't think I'd see you here again." I just told him, trying to find answers. He nodded slowly, meticulously polishing a glass that was already spotless. "She came in the night before it happened." He finally offered, his gaze distant. Looked upset, said she needed to get away. "From who?" I pressed, my heart doing a strange little flip. Jack hesitated, his eyes flicking away from mine. "From you, man?" The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I didn't know what to say. Jack sighed, a sound full of resignation. "Look," she was scared. "Said you'd been showing up here late, waiting in the parking lot." I told her to call the cops. I felt a laugh escape me, but it sounded hollow, wrong. You think I'd hurt her? Jack didn't answer. He just looked at me, a silent question in his eyes, as if he'd always known something I hadn't. Outside, the first drops of rain started to fall. I sat in my truck, watching the world blur through the windshield for what felt like an hour. When I finally decided to leave, something across the street caught my eye. An old brick building with a faded sign, public storage. Emma used to rent a unit there. She called it her treasure chest for sentimental stuff. The manager didn't even blink when I mentioned her name. He just handed me a clipboard and said, Unit 117. Hasn't been opened since '97. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of dust and cold metal.
Boxes were stacked neatly, labeled simply books, clothes, kitchen.
But then, right in the center of the floor, sat one small solitary box. No label. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were photos, dozens of them, so many of me, some of us together. But each one had a chilling commonality. The faces were scratched out. Nestled at the very bottom beneath the scattered memories was a small cassette tape. The label, written in Emma's familiar script, read, Daniel, for when you're ready to tell the truth. A shiver ran down my spine. I took it home, my mind racing, and managed to dig up an old cassette player. With a deep breath, I pressed play. For a second, all I heard was static, a white noise echoing in the quiet room. Then, Emma's voice filled the space, soft, yet unwavering. If you're listening to this, you've already lied to yourself again. Her words were like a cold splash of water. Said you'd never touch me when you were angry. Another pause filled with the hum of the tape. Said you'd never drink again. Each sentence was a hammer blow to my carefully constructed memories. You said you loved me. Then, with an abrupt click, the tape went silent. It was only then that I realized I was crying, tears streaming down my face, landing on the table. And next to them, the dark, rich drops of whiskey. I hadn't even remembered pouring a glass. They say the worst thing about guilt is its power to rewrite your memories, to twist and distort what you thought was true. I always believed the night she died was a blur because of the shock, the grief. But now I wonder if I only remember what I allowed myself to remember, what my mind chose to protect me from. Because every time I think of her falling, I see my hands reaching out, and in that unsettling moment of recollection, I can't tell if I was trying to catch her or if I was pushing her away. This story challenges us to look deeper, not just at the narrative, but at ourselves. What truths do we avoid? What memories have we selectively edited to fit a more comfortable version of reality? Sometimes the most important answers are the ones we're most afraid to ask. If this story resonated with you, or if it made you think, please give this video a thumbs up. Your support means the world. Do we ain't forget to subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking content, and hit that notification bell so you daren't miss out on our next deep dive? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Intro music fades in gently, and then under hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a story that really makes you question everything you think you know. It's about memory, denial, and the terrifying truth that sometimes the biggest monster isn't hiding in the shadows, but right inside your own head. Imagine this, a melody, a voice, haunting you, looping endlessly in your mind. That's where our story begins with Daniel. For him, it was a cassette tape, Emma's voice, playing on repeat. Not just any voice, but one filled with a quiet kind of sadness, a sound that twisted forgiveness into something far more sinister. He clung to the idea that he wasn't crazy, that Emma must have been talking about someone else, another man, a threat the police never found. He was desperate for an answer, a villain he could blame. Then, a tiny detail shifted everything. Hidden deep within Emma's journal, a folded note he'd missed before. Just one word, Eric. Now, Eric Stevens wasn't a stranger. Daniel knew him. He was Emma's co-worker at the bookstore. Tall, polite, maybe a little asterisk to asterisk friendly. Daniel remembered the way Eric used to look at Emma, like a predator patiently waiting for an opportunity, waiting for Daniel to make a mistake. That memory, that resentment, had always festered. So Daniel drove downtown. He parked across from the bookstore, his eyes fixed on the entrance. He watched Eric, saw the same slick hair, the same fake smile. He waited, a familiar unease churning in his gut. When closing time came, he followed. Eric froze when he saw Daniel. Daniel. Man, I didn't know you were still around. Daniel's voice was steady. I just have some questions. Eric looked nervous, tried to brush him off about Emma, right? I already told the cops everything. But Daniel wasn't looking for police reports. Yeah, he said, but maybe not asterisk me asterisk. Double quotes. They found a bench under a flickering streetlight. The rain had stopped, but the air still hung heavy and wet, mirroring the atmosphere between them. Eric sighed, rubbing his hands together as if to warm them, though the night wasn't cold. She came to see me the week before it happened, he admitted. She was scared. A cold dread began to creep through Daniel. Scared of who? Eric hesitated, his gaze landing on Daniel with an unsettling weight. You. The word hit Daniel like a physical blow. That's not true. He felt a sudden defensiveness, a raw instinct to reject the accusation. Eric looked at him then, truly looked at him, with an expression Daniel couldn't quite decipher, a mix of pity and fear. She said you'd been following her, and she said you'd been drinking again. Daniel shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. Quit, she knew that. But even as he said it, a tiny tremor of doubt, a faint echo of memory stirred within him. Eric just shook his head, a gesture of resignation. Then why did she leave this here? He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small envelope. Daniel's name was written on the front, in Emma's distinctive handwriting. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a photograph. It's Emma and him in their kitchen. She was smiling, but Daniel's eyes were drawn, horrified, to something else, a bruise on her wrist. And in the corner of the photo, a dark, dried stain. Blood on the counter. His breath hitched. Where did you get this? Eric's voice was low, almost solemn. She mailed it to me. The day before she died, the world seemed to tilt. Daniel couldn't remember leaving Eric, couldn't remember the drive home. He just found himself in the dark, the photo clutched in one hand, an empty glass in the other. Then, a familiar melody drifted from the radio. Fleetwood Mac, Landslide. The very song that played the night Emma died. He reached for the dial, desperate to shut it off. But the music kept playing, louder, clearer. It wasn't the radio, it was the cassette player. The tape had started again, even though he'd taken it out hours ago. This time, Emma's voice was softer, almost a whisper. You don't have to keep pretending, Daniel. Then, a chilling statement that echoed with an unbearable truth. I know it was an accident. He fell to his knees, hands clamped over his ears, desperate to shut it out. But he could still hear her, not through the tape, not through the room, but inside his own head. He said, you'd never push me when you're angry. And then, clear as day, the sound he tried to bury for 2 years, a body hitting the floor, glass shattering. His own voice, screaming her name. They say the mind hides things to protect itself. It creates narratives, builds walls around painful truths, so we can keep functioning. But sometimes it hides them so well for so long that you start believing your own lies. Daniel, in that moment, understood the terrifying weight of that truth. He finally saw the fractured fragments of his memory coalescing into a horrifying picture. He was forced to confront a truth far more terrifying than any external monster. The possibility that he was the monster. For 2 years, he had convinced himself someone else was responsible, clinging to a convenient lie that allowed him to avoid the unbearable weight of guilt. But now, Emma's voice, the photograph, Eric's words, they had shattered the carefully constructed fortress of his denial. The truth had finally broken through. This story is a stark reminder that our perception of reality can be deeply flawed, shaped by our own defense mechanisms. It's about the burden of truth and the courage it takes to face the darkest parts of ourselves. What would you do if you realized the story you'd been telling yourself for years was a lie? If this story resonated with you, or if it just gave you chills, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into complex narratives, and let me know in the comments below what you think Daniel should do next. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a story that's less about ghosts and more about the shadows we cast ourselves. This isn't your typical thriller. It's a raw, emotional journey into memory, guilt, and the unsettling truth hidden in plain sight. If you've ever wrestled with your past or wondered how much we truly choose to forget, then you're going to want to stick around for this one. Imagine trying to remember something you've spent years actively trying to forget. It's like digging through embers. The closer you get, the more it burns. That's where our protagonist, Daniel, found himself. For 2 long years, he told himself he'd seen enough. Emma's tape, her photos, all of it. There had to be a logical explanation, right? But deep down, he knew he was circling a truth he absolutely didn't want to touch. So, Daniel did what he probably should have done much sooner. He went back to the police station. It's funny how some things never change. Detective Alvarez was still there. Same cheap suit, same weary eyes. Like he'd seen 1,000 stories just like Daniel's. The detective looked genuinely surprised when Daniel walked in. "Daniel Cross," he said, a hint of something unreadable in his voice. "Didn't expect to see you again." Daniel's response was simple, yet heavy with unspoken purpose. "I just need to look at the file," he said, one last time. Alvarez sighed, a sound that spoke volumes of routine, of closed chapters. "You know it's closed," he stated, almost a challenge. "Ounce." Daniel met his gaze. "I know," he replied, a quiet intensity in his voice. "But sometimes closed cases aren't really closed, are they?" "No." The detective stared at him for a moment, a flicker of something in his eyes. Maybe curiosity, maybe a shared understanding of how the world sometimes works. Then, without another word, he opened a drawer, pulled out a familiar-looking folder, and slid it across the desk. "Knock yourself out." The file itself hadn't changed. Same photos, frozen moments of a life cut short. Same witness statements, carefully transcribed. Same official report, unequivocally stating Emma's death was a tragic accident. Daniel's eyes scanned the pages, searching for something, anything he might have missed before. And then it caught his eye. A small, unassuming form, tucked almost out of sight behind the others, half folded as if someone had tried to hide it. It was the official statement confirming his alibi for that fateful night. And there it was, his signature looped awkwardly at the bottom, like it was written by someone whose hand was shaking. But here's the chilling part. Daniel didn't remember signing it. He distinctly remembered asterisks telling asterisks them he was with a friend, a Kyle, but this signature. It felt alien, and the witness signature, like, not just missing a name, but entirely blank. No last name for Kyle, no phone number, no statement from this friend who was supposedly with him. The air seemed to leave Daniel's lungs in a rush. A sudden, cold realization washed over him. The detective, ever observant, noticed the change. "Something wrong?" he asked, his voice cutting through Daniel's sudden daze. Daniel tried to speak, but the words were caught in his throat. He just shook his head, closed the folder with a deliberate snap, and walked out. The silence in the police station seemed to follow him. Outside, the rain had started again, steady and cold, as if it had been waiting for his departure. He drove home, every streetlight flashing like a frantic pulse, illuminating fragments of a memory he couldn't quite grasp. When he finally got inside his apartment, it felt smaller, the walls pressing in. He poured a drink, then another. He sank into a chair, the amber liquid swirling in his glass, and looked at Emma's photo again. It was a familiar picture, one he'd looked at countless times, but tonight it was different. He saw the bruise, something he'd always dismissed as an accident, a clumsy moment. But tonight, for the first time, he saw something else. In the background of the photo, reflected in the glass cabinet door behind Emma, was a hand, mid-motion. Asterisk his asterisk hand. Holding the bottle he swore he'd thrown away, the one he claimed he wasn't even touching that night. The truth, like a shard of glass, began to piece itself together. The old tape recorder was still sitting on the counter, a relic from a different time. He pressed play, static. Then, Emma's voice, soft but firmer than he remembered. "You said you were sorry? I believed you. It's my fault." He grabbed the recorder, slamming it off, but the words wouldn't stop echoing in his mind. Everywhere he looked, he saw her in the chair, in the hallway by the door. Always with that same look, not fear, not anger, just profound disappointment. He stumbled into the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. The mirror was fogged from the steam, but as he wiped it clear, he saw a shape behind him. He spun around, nothing there. But on the mirror, written in the condensation, were the same words from her last journal entry, words that now chilled him to the bone. He knows. A desperate energy seized him. He tore through the apartment, drawers, cabinets, boxes, until he found it. The old answering machine, the one the police had taken as evidence and returned months later. The tape inside was labeled March 3rd, 1997, the night she died. His heart hammered against his ribs as he hit play. "Daniel, it's me. Please, just come home. We can talk about this." A pause, heavy with unspoken plea. "You don't have to shout anymore, I get it. I'll go tomorrow. Just not tonight, okay?" Silence. Then the faint, unmistakable sound of glass breaking. Daniel stopped, the recording cut off abruptly. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Daniel froze, every nerve ending screaming. The caller ID said private number. His hand shook uncontrollably as he lifted the receiver. Nothing. Just breathing. And then a whisper like a ghost in his ear. "You remember now, don't you?" He dropped the phone. It hit the floor and cracked, but he could still hear her voice, tinny and distorted, leaking through the static. "You can't forgive what you won't admit." Daniel sank to the floor, his head pounding, every sound collapsing into one terrifying symphony. The rain, the static from the broken phone, the frantic pulse in his ears. And then, finally, it all came rushing back. The last moment, the argument. Her backing away, eyes wide, filled not with fear but with that same deep disappointment. His hand raised. The push. The sickening sound of her skull hitting the corner of the table. Then silence. Awful, suffocating silence. When he opened his eyes, he was still on the floor. The apartment quiet, the rain outside having finally stopped. He picked up the photo again, the one with the bruise, the one that started this whole agonizing journey. The reflection in the cabinet wasn't just his hand anymore. It was his face, clear, unforgiving, looking straight at the camera. She must have taken the picture seconds before it happened. They say closure comes when you find the truth. Out. But sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes it just sits with you, a silent, heavy presence, breathing, watching, waiting. Because when you're the reason someone's gone, the only person left to haunt you is yourself. This story is a stark reminder that sometimes the most terrifying truths are the ones we hide from ourselves. It's about facing our past, no matter how painful, and understanding the consequences of our actions. If this story resonated with you, or if it made you think, please give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us bring more compelling narratives to light. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. We've got more fascinating stories coming your way. Till next time, stay curious and always be kind. Thanks for watching. Alright everyone, settle in, because today we're diving deep into a story that really makes you think about truth, silence, and the weight of what we carry. Have you ever felt like there's something you need to say, but the words just won't come? Or maybe you've been living with a secret so heavy, it feels like it's crushing you from the inside out? Well, this is Daniel's story, and trust me, it's a powerful one. Imagine waking up one morning and suddenly, after years of trying to bury something, it all comes flooding back. Every detail, every painful memory, sharper and clearer than ever before. That's exactly what happened to Daniel on March 3rd, 1999. The date itself is significant, but we'll get to that. For 2 years, Daniel had been living a lie, a carefully constructed narrative about an accident. A tragic fall that took the life of the woman he loved, Emma. The dust in his apartment, the empty glass, the photo, everything looked the same. But for Daniel, nothing felt the same anymore. The truth, after 2 years of silent battle, was finally ready to break free. He remembered it all. The weeks of fighting, the tension in the air, Emma saying she was leaving, that she couldn't live like this anymore, Daniel's desperate plea that he could change, and her heartbreaking disbelief, the sharp, metallic sound of her keys hitting the counter, the pain in her voice as she said, "Daniel, you need help." And then, in a split second, everything spiraled. The whiskey bottle in his hand, a grasp too tight on her wrist, her stumble, the sickening thud as she hit the table. The silence that followed was deafening, a silence that would echo in his mind for years. She didn't scream, didn't move, she just fell. And Daniel, frozen in that moment, waited for her to breathe again, but she never did. He couldn't even remember if he called 911. The details of that immediate aftermath were a blur, obscured by shock and fear. But he knew this. When the police arrived, he was sitting beside her, spinning a story about an accidental fall, and they believed him. Everyone did. They called it an accident, and Daniel, trapped in his guilt and fear, let them. For 2 long years, he lived inside that lie, polishing it, rehearsing it, until sometimes even he started to believe it. It's incredible how the human mind can rationalize, can create protective layers around trauma. But the mind also has a way of peeling itself open, doesn't it? When you least expect it, those buried truths start to surface. Daniel realized it wasn't Emma's ghost haunting him, or external forces trying to expose his secret. It was him. It was his own conscience, working tirelessly through every tape, every photo, every whisper in his mind, trying to tell the truth. It was a cry for release, a deep internal urging to set things right. And so on that fateful morning before the sun had even fully risen, Daniel drove to the police station. Detective Alvarez, a man who had likely seen it all, was at his desk, coffee in hand. He looked up, probably surprised to see Daniel again after all this time. "Back again?" he asked, a hint of curiosity in his voice. Daniel's reply was simple, yet packed with immense weight. "I need to add something to my statement." Alvarez, perhaps sensing the gravity in Daniel's tone, raised an eyebrow. "You already gave one." Daniel looked him straight in the eye. "Not the real one." Think about the courage it must have taken to say those words. To finally break through the silence and confront the truth he had been hiding for so long. Detective Alvarez didn't rush him. He watched Daniel for a long moment, a silent assessment, then slid a recorder across the table. "Start whenever you're ready," he said. And with that, Daniel began. His voice shook, but he didn't stop. He told Alvarez everything. The fight, the bottle, the fall, the suffocating silence that followed. He laid bare his soul, revealing the darkest moment of his life. Alvarez didn't interrupt, didn't write anything down. He just listened, his presence a silent anchor for Daniel's confession. When Daniel finished, the detective's voice was quiet, almost reflective. "You know what this means, right?" Daniel nodded, the weight of the inevitable settling over him, yet somehow feeling lighter. "Yeah, I know." Alvarez turned off the recorder, leaned back, and for a long moment neither man spoke. The confession was out. The truth was finally spoken. Outside, the world seemed to respond in kind. It started to rain again, soft and steady, as if the heavens themselves were trying to wash something clean. It was a poignant moment, a natural reflection of the internal cleansing Daniel was experiencing. They took him to an empty cell, no bars, just a door with a small window. It sounds paradoxical, but in that moment, in that cold, stark room, Daniel experienced a freedom he hadn't felt in years. For the first time, he could truly breathe. He closed his eyes, and in his mind's eye, he saw her, Emma, standing in the kitchen, sunlight catching her hair, humming that same old song they both loved, and she smiled. Not angry, not sad, but free. Then she turned and walked away. A final farewell, a silent acceptance. It was March 3rd, 1999, exactly 2 years to the day since her death. The local paper ran the story. Daniel Cross confesses to girlfriend S death after 2 years of silence. The town was shocked. They said he seemed quiet, polite, always kept to himself. They never understand, the article noted. It's always the quiet ones. But there was one detail the paper didn't print, a detail no one else saw. Because when the officers emptied Daniel's pockets that morning, they found a folded note. Its handwriting dated 2 years earlier. "If I ever forget, remind me. I killed her." This story really makes you question our understanding of guilt, doesn't it? We often say guilt is heavy, that it weighs you down. But Daniel's experience suggests something different. He realized that guilt doesn't weigh you down, it keeps you moving. Round and round in a tormenting cycle, until the truth finally catches up. And when it does, when you finally face it, you don't fall asleep into oblivion. You finally wake up. Daniel's confession wasn't the end. It was the beginning of his true awakening. It was the moment he chose truth over comfort, accountability over denial. What do you all think about Daniel's journey? Have you ever had a moment where you felt compelled to finally tell the truth about something, no matter the consequences? Share your thoughts in the comments below. This story truly reminds us of the profound impact of our actions and the enduring power of truth. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you found this story compelling, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful narratives, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next upload. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you in the next video.